Welcome back to the class, children. In today's class, we are going to discuss about Mendelian laws of inheritance. We know Mendel had performed different types of crosses in Pisum sativum plant. He performed monohybrid cross, back cross, test cross, dihybrid cross. So several crosses he had performed in pea plant. And while performing his experiments, he had concluded certain ideas about the transmission of characters. So whatever the conclusion he had made, that he performed, that he put forth in the name called as laws of inheritance. So there are three laws commonly called as Mendel's laws. Let us see one by one. The law of dominance, law of segregation, and law of independent assortment. So these are the three laws which was put forth by Mendel based on his experimental observation. The first law is law of dominance. So what does this law states? When two pure breeding varieties with contrasting characters are crossed, only one triad will be expressed in the offspring. The triad which is expressed in the offspring is referred as dominant, and the one which is not expressed in the offspring is referred as recessive. A very simple law. We know Mendel performed the monohybrid cross. In that cross, he crossed the tall plant with that of the dwarf plant, and the product and the F1 offspring what he got is tall plant. Only one character is expressed. The dwarf nature is not expressed in the F1 generation, right? So he came to a conclusion that the character which is expressed in the offspring when pure breeding varieties were crossed, and that character which is expressed in the offspring is called as dominant character, and the another character which is not expressed in the offspring is called as recessive character. If you look at this image, right? So this is a violet colored flower, and if this plant producing violet colored flower is crossed with another plant producing white colored flower, so we have two colors, different colors. One is white, another one is violet. So when these two plants were crossed, the product, the offspring, produces violet colored flowers. So in this case, the violet is the dominant, and obviously the white flower is the recessive, right? Or else, if the product is a white colored flower, then we have to call white as the dominant and violet as the recessive. But here we got only the violet flower. So the violet which is expressed in the F1 offspring is said to be the dominant character, and the character which is not expressed in this F1 offspring, that is the white character, the white color of the flower, is said to be the recessive, right? A very simple law of dominance, right? When two pure breeding varieties were crossed with those having contrasting characters, only one character which is expressed in the F1 generation is said to be the dominant, and the character which is not expressed in the offspring is said to be the recessive. A very simplified law, and this law is the product of monohybrid cross. The second law is called as law of segregation. So in this law states that at the time of gamete formation, the allelic pair of a gene segregate, and as a result, each gamete will have only one allele of a gene. A very important law, and this law is also a product of monohybrid cross. So we know gene, if you say gene, each gene has a minimum of two alleles, right? A allelic pair. So this law states that the allelic pair of a gene separate during the gamete formation, and if you see the gamete have only one allele of the particular gene. Let us see through this diagram. We know during the gamete formation, the diploid germinal cell undergoes meiosis and forms the haploid cell, right? So this is a diploid cell having one allele from father and another allele from mother, right? So these are the two alleles of a particular gene. For example, tallness. So this is a homozygous tall, right? So here these two alleles are present in a cell. Both the alleles are present, two alleles are present, so it is a diploid cell, right? So now this cell, after the gamete formation or during the meiosis, by the formation of gametes, these alleles get separated and the gametes will receive only one allele of a gene, right? So if you see, so here we have two capital T's, a diploid condition, whereas if you see in the gamete we have only one capital T, only one allele has entered, right? So this diploid condition has reduced to haploid. So that is what it is mentioned there. The allelic pair of a gene. So this is the allelic pair of a gene. And this gene is responsible for tallness. And this allelic pair will separate out when during the gamete formation. So during the gamete formation, this allelic pair will separate out. As a result, each gamete, so the gametes produced will receive only one allele of a gene. So that is a very important point we have to keep in mind, right? So this law states that each and every gamete will have only one allele of a gene, right? So here in this case, if you see, this is the diploid cell having two alleles of a gene, right? So this gene is responsible for plant height, right? So we have two alleles, one has come from father and another has come from mother. So this diploid cell undergoes meiosis and forms the gametes, and in the gametes it has received only one allele of a particular gene. So this gamete has received the tall allele of the gene, and this gamete has received the dwarf allele of the gene, right? And here, because of the homozygous condition, both the gametes has received the dominant allele, right? So that doesn't matter. Here, what we have to consider is, so during the gamete formation, the alleles will separate out or sort out or segregate, and as a result, each gamete will have only one allele, right? So this is a very important law, what we call it as law of segregation. So law of segregation states that the allelic pair of a gene will segregate, and as a result each gamete will have one allele of the gene, right? So from this diagram we can able to understand further clearly, right? So here this is the diploid cell having two alleles for a particular character, right? So here seed shape. So these two alleles are responsible for seed shape, right? So this allele is round seed shape, it gives the round seed allele, and this is the wrinkled seed allele. So indicated by capital R, round seed dominant form, and the recessive R indicates the wrinkled shape of the seed, right? So here during the gamete formation, this diploid cell undergoes duplication and form the doubling of the chromosome occurs, alleles get doubled, and further meiosis 1 occurs, the chromosome separates, and after the meiosis, if you see the gametes, each gamete has received only one allele, right? Either the dominant allele or the recessive allele, right? So see the difference between, this is the diploid condition having both the alleles, right? So see the gametic condition, this is the haploid condition receiving only one allele of the gene. So this is the difference. So in diploid cell always the genes will have the allelic pairs, whereas in haploid condition, that is in the gametic condition, only one allele of the gene will be there, right? So if you see this gamete has received only one allele, the dominant allele for the particular gene, and if you see this gamete, the gamete has received the recessive allele for the particular gene, right? So here we are not considering about the dominant or recessive forms. We are considering that each gamete will receive only any one allele of a particular gene. So that is what we call it as principle of segregation or law of segregation. The third law is called as law of independent assortment, right? So the law of independent assortment, right? So this law of independent assortment was concluded based on the observations of dihybrid cross, right? Principle of segregation, that is law of segregation, means it deals only with the one gene, two alleles. Here independent assortment means the same segregation, but here we are considering more than one gene, right? More than one, that is 2 or 3 or 4, that doesn't matter, right? So what is the law states? During gamete formation, allelic pair of one gene will sort out independently of the alleles of another gene, right? We already know that during the gamete formation, the allelic pairs will separate and the gametes will receive only one allele of the gene, right? So that is what we have discussed in this, right? So in law of segregation, so the allelic pair will separate and the gametes will receive only one allele. Whereas in independent assortment, the allelic pair will assort out independently of the alleles of another gene, right? Let us discuss here. So look at this diagram, right? So here we have one allelic pair, right? So this is the, let us imagine the blue color represents the maternal chromosome, whereas the red color refers the paternal chromosome, right? So this chromosome contains alleles. This is a gene, right? So alleles, these alleles are responsible for round color, whereas another chromosome, right? This chromosome also has two alleles and these alleles are responsible for yellow color. So this is for round shape and this is for shape and this is for color, right? So we know the condition. This is a dihybrid. So round allele, wrinkled allele, capital Y represents the yellow color and small y represents the green color, right? So here we are considering two allelic pairs, right? If you see this image, we have considered only one allelic pair, right? Only one is considered. Whereas here we are considering two. One is shape, the allelic pair of seed shape. Another one is the allelic pair of color of the seed, right? So this is a diploid condition. This is a diploid cell. Now this diploid cell, so this is the metaphase. So the chromosomes are aligned in the equatorial plane. See, after the metaphase, anaphase will occur. The chromosomes will separate. See this condition. All the maternal chromosomes has separated to one side and all the paternal chromosome has separated to another side, right? Now, when this forms the gametes, see, capital R, capital Y, one gamete will be formed. Likewise, another gamete will also contains capital R, capital Y. And if you see this one, right? So this is maternal chromosome. Both are maternal chromosome. So it forms the gametes as small r small y and small r small y. This is one condition, right? But apart from this condition, there is also another chance, right? So this is another way of segregation. So this also occur at the same time. This also may occur, right? So see, in this condition, here the maternal chromosome and the paternal chromosome. So this is for seed shape, and if you see the chromosome aligned or in a different manner. So see the difference between this one and this one, right? So this are now after the metaphase, if you see, the dominant form is now going with the recessive form, right? So here it goes with the dominant form, here it goes with the recessive form. Both the chances are possible. So one allele, right? So one allele may either go with another allele or the dominant allele or the recessive allele, right? So to simply understand, the segregation of one allele will not influence the segregation of another allele, right? So there is no compulsion, right? So if this R may go with either dominant form or may either go with the recessive form, both the chances are possible. Likewise, the recessive allele may go with the another recessive allele or else may go with the another dominant allele. So both the chances are possible. That is why we are getting the gametes in different form. If you see the dihybrid cross, we have observed the ratio as 9:3:3:1, right? So that is, we have observed the parental forms as well as the recombinant forms. Here this is the parental form round yellow and this is the parental form wrinkled green. Whereas apart from these two, we also have received the round green as well as the wrinkled yellow, right? So the parental form has come when because of the chromosomes are aligned in such way, this way, whereas the recombinants are formed because of the alignment in this way, right? So the chances are possible. There is no compulsion, right? So one character will not influence the behavior of another character, right? Or one allele does not influence the segregation of another allele, right? So they sort out independently. There is no compulsion, right? Dominant allele always goes with another dominant allele, or recessive allele always goes with another recessive allele. That and all doesn't matter, right? A dominant allele has equal chance to go with either another dominant allele or recessive allele. That is why we are getting different combinations of maternal paternal chromosomes, right? So this is what we call it as law of independent assortment, right? And this law of independent assortment is the conclusion made based on the results of dihybrid crosser. And the law of independent assortment is very important because of this independent assortment, because of this no compulsion, any allele may go with any other allele, leading to the genetic diversity, right? So if the dominant form goes with the dominant form alone, then we get only the dominant form. The paternal variety and the maternal variety alone will be formed. Whereas if you see this condition, the dominant form also goes with the another recessive allelic pair. So as a result, we get a new plant. So always the independent assortment will lead to the genetic diversity, right? So this is the one of the very important point regarding the independent assortment. And moreover, law of independent assortment is possible or applicable only if the alleles are present in separate chromosome, right? See here, this chromosome has the allele for shape and the allele for the color is present in separate chromosome. See, here one chromosome has the allele for shape. There is another chromosome. In that chromosome only we have the color allele. Both the alleles are present in two different chromosomes. Only if they are present in the two separate chromosomes, this law of independent assortment is possible, right? So this law of independent assortment is applicable only if the chromosomes are present in separate, or only if the alleles are present in separate chromosomes, right? And this is about the law of independent assortment. So children, in this class we have discussed about the Mendelian laws, we have discussed about law of dominance, law of independent assortment and law of segregation, right? Hope this session will be a useful one. Let us meet in the next episode. Thank you.